All right, so I want to go through a tour of the Maya interface. So you're used to what it is, where things are located. So I'm going to go to my documents. And this doesn't matter if you're on a Mac or a PC. It still works the same way. It's just a matter of where these things are located. So the first thing I want to do is go to my documents on my PC. And there should be an area right here that says Maya. And this is where Maya saves all of its settings and projects and everything else. So it's kind of like the default location. On the school computers, or actually on the P drive, so you'd have to go to the P drive, and there should be a Maya folder there. And inside here is every version of Maya and their preferences. So I'm going to delete these old folders. And you'll see this one says 2019 because that's the most recent version. And if I open this up, you'll see the modules, prefs, presets, scripts, and so on. So these are all the preferences for Maya 2019. If I delete that folder, and then I go to Maya and I open this up, oops, not 3019, that would be interesting. Because I have a 2018 folder here, it's actually going to ask me, do you want to copy your old preferences right here, or do you want to create default? I'm going to say create default. And if you didn't have that folder already, there's no problem. Initially when you start the software the first time, you want to delete that folder. Scoot that over. It's thinking about it. That way you're starting with a fresh palette versus somebody else's preferences that they may have corrupted or modified or changed beyond what you would want. So as this is my first time opening this version of Maya with my new preferences, it's asking me, do you want to show what is a new item? Okay, so new things inside Maya will get highlighted with this green. I could turn that on or off. Just to give you an example, if I go to, let's say, FX, and I go to Bifrost, no, not showing anything new. I'm boring. There it is. Bifrost Browser, Bifrost Graph Editor. Okay, so I'm going to not turn that on because I don't really need it, and I don't want to show this at the startup again. I can turn this back on later if I need to. Sometimes you'll also get this other pop-up window that comes in here asking you if you want to share your analytics or something. You can close that as well. So this is the My interface. Up here on the top left, these are different menu items that you can get through. Okay, so if I'm in the modeling menu, you'll see that, oops, let's go back to, I forget what that was on, probably custom. If I go to the modeling menu, that will show me up here specific items dealing with modeling. Okay, so if I'm modeling something, this is typically the menu item I'll have. If I'm rigging something, this is the menu items I'll have. This is animation, FX, and rendering, and then you can customize it. And more of the professional people, they don't rely on the basics for anything because you get a workflow that you want to develop and you work with this customize button and you build menu items that make sense to you. Okay, everything, even though these are massive, like the tools here, they go on forever and then there's pop-outs here. You don't use all of these for every task. Sometimes you'll never touch a button, and then sometimes you will. You'll be touching that button multiple times throughout the entire session that you're using the software. So this is what changes that here. There's some hotkeys that eventually we'll go over too, to how to switch between these a little bit quicker, but that's that. You'll notice that from File over here to Window, these don't change. So as I go through this, you'll see that those all stay the same. Okay, and those are just default ones or the standard ones that would come with most softwares anyway, right? So File is something you typically see, Edit, and then obviously Create, Select, Modify, and Display. And Windows are different ones. Windows you would see for other things. Anything that you need to pop up that's like a window that would be like an editor or another tool, there's typically going to be under the window area. So you can think of this like a palette, like a Photoshop or something. Right below this area here is little hotkey buttons or little short key buttons. New scene, open scene, save scene, and then undo and redo. your best to use the actual things. You know, Control S, Control N, Control O. These little arrows here actually will expand or contract these areas. So if you need to see something, maybe you're not like able to see it on your screen, you can make those bigger or smaller by clicking on these little lines or arrows. Okay. So we'll get more into what these actually mean, but just so you know that that's just different ways you can collapse and shrink things. Render bars, here's my login stuff right there. And then over here on the right, these buttons are going to control what this is. So if I change this, that's a different button. I change this, that's a different thing. I change this, that's a different thing, and so on and so on. Okay. Right above this, we have Workspaces. So this is similar to something you would see in After Effects or Photoshop or Illustrator. What are you doing? And it'll basically customize the workspace so that if I go to rigging, now I'm in the rigging setup. Like this is a common way that you would rig something, is to have these menu items here. Whereas if you're modeling something as an expert, you'll see there's very little interface, versus modeling as a standard, you have these tools up there. Okay. Typically I leave mine in classic and just kind of customize as I go. This area is the shelf. So a lot of these menu items that you see here, which are, you know, things that you're constantly going to be going to, a lot of them are also there. Okay. I'll tell you that most people don't use a lot of shelf tools, just because going through here and having to switch between these and then trying to decipher what each one of these things means is kind of like, you know, it's difficult to do. It's slow to do. We will use a custom one where we'll customize our shelf and add our own items to our own shelf that we will use and know what they mean. So we'll do that in another video. This on the left, this is my selection tools right here, these first three. So this is just regular, this is lassoing, and then this is lassoing tool. It's not lassoing tool. Why is it saying that? That's painting tool. Yeah, they call it lasso tool, I guess, but it's the paintbrush tool. Move tool, rotate tool, and scale tool. Notice on the far right, I can't move my mouse over there. I guess I can. It'll say, you know, here's rotate is, or scale is R. That's the hotkey. Here's the rotate tool. Come on. And that's E. And then you can even hit a video here, and it'll give you a little video of how that tool works. Okay. Now each one of these items, you could also double click and get more information about how it's doing these things. How is it moving something? If I click on the rotate, you'll see those change slightly. If I click on scale, that changes slightly. If I click on select, you'll see that that changes pretty much drastically. You can reset the tool. You can get tool help. And you'll see obviously these open up. You can get more information on these things, which you'll see. There will be other tools that will kind of pop up in this area once we start playing with stuff, but they're not there yet. These are the different layouts for this area. So right now we're dealing with one perspective view. If we go to 4, we can see the top, front, side, and perspective. If we go to left and right, if we go to outliner and left and right, or front and perspective, we can see that. Again, typically I work like this. My outliner is typically floating, which you can just drag off. So I like to be able to move this where I need it. Sometimes if I'm working on something specific, I will have it nested inside here. If I can hit that spot again to get it to nest. It just flickered for a second and then I went away. Come on, baby. Oh, there it is. Oh, that's the wrong spot. Right there. And then shrink this over. If you screw your stuff up too bad, you can always go back here. Yes. And just go back to classic, or go back to reset, and it'll reset that current workspace so you're back to where you were. This is our main window, so we're doing a lot of work inside of this area. This has its own menus, so depending on what we want to see in this specific window is what we're seeing here. If we're on the 4 view, each one of these has their own menu items for how you're seeing something. So if you were to create, let's say, a cube, I'm going to make it bigger so we can see it. In this view here, I may want it to be wireframe, but in this view, I have it shaded. Okay, or I want this wireframe and I want this one shaded. Okay, so that may be something that you want to specifically see for whatever reason. Okay. Most people don't work with this 4 view. Most people will switch to the other views, which is one of these menus, panels, perspective. You can go to the perspective view, which is this, or you can go to orthographic and go to front, side, or top. Okay. And again, there's hotkeys, which we'll get into for that. And then here's more stuff. So this is called the outliner, but you can also choose other panels to switch into this, which is really cool. Here's some more. Here's some more. Okay. The far right, we have different items here. I showed you I can switch up here what that is. Right now it's the channel box, and this will give you information about an object. So here is my item here. I scaled it up 11.7. I did not rotate it. I did not translate it, and the visibility is on. So if I want to change any of these, I could just click on one of these and type it in, and it'll automatically update what that number is. Okay, so very helpful for you to be able to manipulate these things and tweak what they are. You'll also notice that there's a little thing down here. It says P-Cube Shape 1, Inputs, Polycube. If I click on Polycube, that gives me more items here, which I could then go through and add different values and change those things too. Each one of these things, you'll notice, has a virtual slider. So up here, as my mouse is in this area, you'll see the 2 arrows and the 2 lines. As I click and drag in that area, it's allowing me to create a virtual slider to control what that's doing. Okay, so really handy, really quick way to be able to manipulate some of the stuff. Modeling tools, so as you start building stuff, these are just tools that come up. And then the attribute editor. This is another thing that I will typically pull off and have floating, because I prefer this to be something that floats, and I can kind of go between the tabs at the top of this. Okay. If I lose it, I can always go back to Window, go back to Attribute Editor, probably under General Editors, Attribute Editor, there it is. And I can always drag it back into this tab area if I desired to. Okay. Down here, display or animation. So this is where we're able to create different display layers. Because this is 3D, the layers work different. If something is on top in the layers palette, doesn't mean that it's going to be on top in our scene. It's just a way for us to organize what we're seeing. So that's what these are for. And then animation is similar, but it allows you to stack animations. So you can do one animation of a ball bouncing, one of it moving, one of it squishing. You can stack and control each one individually. These are our play sliders. You see I can hit the play button, stop button, rewind button, so on. This is what frame it's currently at. These are the start frames and the end frames. Okay, and then we are able to click and drag this to control where that's at. This is the work area. So if you're doing an animation super close, you may want to be zoomed in there. This stuff we'll get into eventually in later classes or later in the class. Our frame rate, so if we're doing 24 frames a second, 30 frames a second, whatever it is, we're controlling it here. This is how we play. So if we were to hit play, you'll see that it loops all the way around. If I click this, it'll just stop. So it'll go play to the end and stop. Or if I click this, it'll play back and forth. There's no animation, so I'm not seeing anything, but that's what it's doing. This is cached playback. We don't need to worry about this now. We'll get to this guy in a second. This is our animation preferences. And then this is scripting. So everything in Maya is actually a script. So if you were to type in, let's say, cube and hit enter on the keyboard, oops, sorry, P-cube and hit enter on the keyboard. There we go. If we type sphere, all lowercase and hit enter, we're able to bring up a sphere because that's what Maya is doing. When it's going here and we're clicking on this sphere here, or cube there, or whatever, it's running a script. And that's what's great about Maya is you can actually take those script items and you can save them and use them and repurpose them for other things. This area is our warning one. So when I was typing in the wrong words, when I was typing in regular cube, you'll see that an error message came up, cannot find procedure cube. That just means it can't find the script. If I'm using a tool wrong, it'll come up there. If I do it correctly, like when I typed in sphere, it said result NURB sphere. So this area here and actually down here are your go-tos for something isn't working or I need more assistance. You'll see if I go to cube down at the very, very bottom right here, it says what that's going to do. Create a cube, create a cylinder, create a donut, a torus. And then the far, far, far right of that, we have this. This window here is just an expanded version of this. So as everything you do in Maya is actually recorded to show you exactly like you click this button, you click this button, you click that button. Here's what Maya did for that. So it saves all that information right up here. And then down here, this is an expanded version of this. So if you wanted to, let's say, create a sphere, and then create another sphere, and then create another sphere, let's say, I can type all three, hit enter, and then it'll create spheres 1, 2, and 3. Okay? So very quickly you can do that. There's a lot more advanced stuff you can do inside here, but it's that's what it's for. Close that. And then I'm going to go into the animation preferences and just show what these are. So these are all your preferences that you would use to set up your Maya. So I'm going to have a separate video of just how to customize these specifically, but that's what this is for. Okay, so if something's not working, usually I'll come in here and revert this to saved or restore the default setting, and that usually will help. And that's pretty much the Maya interface. It'll get more involved as we go. We'll learn some more hotkeys of how to manipulate things, but as far as just moving around this area, that's what it is. And I will say also that there are hidden menus and stuff inside Maya, or hidden ways to get to them. Like if I were to right click, there's a menu that just came up. If I were to hold the space bar, this is another menu that comes up. If I have an object here and I right click, a different menu comes up. If I hold shift and right click, a different menu comes up. Okay, so we'll get into all of that stuff later, but right now just a little interface browsing. That's what we set it up as.